Hello, everyone. It's Charlene Lee, and today I'm excited to be talking about how to pull together an AI strategy. And when I'm talking about pulling together, I'm talking about from soup to nuts. And oftentimes, when I talk to an organization, I ask them, what's your AI strategy? And they pull up this long list of use cases. And I say over and over again, use cases are not a strategy. So today I'm going to be talking about how to do this. So a couple things, would love for you to share what your top AI strategic goals are and objectives. And if you can, share a little bit about the path with which you took to get to that strategy. And so let's dive into it. I've got a lot of content for you to share today. All right, so I want to talk about today it going from AI use cases to strategy. And again, this is a typical kind of list of things that I get. So again, hundreds sometimes of use cases just collected from all over the organization. And it feels good. Like these are all examples of ways that AI can create value. But then where do you go with this? What do you do with it? So what one of the things I'll talk about today is this again, how do you actually create a strategy? And these are the steps we're going to be talking about today, six very specific steps about how to understand how AI creates value, to put together some of the top initiatives and applications, to how do you prioritize, and then, of course, how do you keep it updated when it's constantly changing. And we'll talk a little bit about execution and governance at the end, how to organize for AI. All right, let's get started. So the way I think about this is that there are three major ways that AI creates value. And so one thing you can do if you have all these use cases sitting around is to go and find all the ways that group them into three categories. And I call this a matrix because they are looking at three key ways. First of all, efficiency and productivity. It is the number one area that AI can create value. And it's, again, very focused on how do we do things better, faster, more efficiently. The second area is around engagement. How do we engage with our customers, our clients in a deeper way, more personalized way, more frequently or less frequently, as the case may be? And the third one that's interesting is the ability to reinvent what you actually do. And I say this differently than transformation because you can transform the way the organization works with efficiency and with engagement. But reinvention is something very specific. You're looking for new opportunities, new ways to move into new businesses. So this is about reinventing what you do. And what I think is so important to think about is by categorizing all those use cases and capturing them into these buckets, you also start thinking differently. They say, how can I create value around efficiency? How do I create value around engagement? Or what are the opportunities for reinvention? So thinking in these broad categories of value and then understanding how they support each other. And that's why that's overlapping. There's a matrix here of each of these things building on each other. So understanding again how you create those use cases is very important. But then you have to actually pull this into a strategy. And I just want to go back and just reinforce what strategy is. This comes from Roger Martin, who is the dean of the Rotman School. He was one of my partners when I was at Monitor Company. And he has this saying that strategy is a set of integrated choices that position your organization to win. So you have all these initiatives, all these applications and solutions you can build. How do you put them together into a strategy? How do you choose which of these use cases are the ones that are going to be the ones that you believe are the best to use? And so one of the ways to think about this is that you want to throw all those use cases that you have into a funnel and filter them through this one very specific lens. What are the biggest strategic problems you are trying to solve? So take all those areas that you created value, and now you're trying to look at it from a different lens and to say, given our strategic objectives, given our vision of what the marketplace looks like, given where we want to go to solve these customer problems, what are the biggest objectives that we want to have? And what are the biggest barriers, challenges, problems that we have in addressing and achieving that strategic objective? And by focusing on the problems, you're getting really laser focused to say, okay, we've got these problems. What can AI do to help us solve those problems? And again, I go back to that definition. Strategy is a set of integrated choices. So once you choose one thing, you may find that, oh, that means we have to choose something else too. We may not have the capabilities, et cetera, to be able to pull this off. So I want to give you a case study of one organization that did a great job of this. And it is a large insurance company. And they had gathered at this point about 60 use cases. And they assigned their head of strategy, like, go figure out what the strategy is going to be for AI. Because again, 60 use cases isn't going to help us. So they went through and identified what are some of the biggest problems that they had. And they identified those three particular problems. And let me just share the process of how they actually did that. So these are the three biggest areas that they identified. They wanted to accelerate the proposal processes. They wanted to enhance claim processing and optimize underwriting. So very specifically, these are the three biggest problems we have as an insurance company. Then they figured out, okay, what are the use cases they could do to actually support those three key problems? And so they identified and narrowed those 60 use cases to three very specific use cases that would support these three problems. So one of the things they did is they sped up the proposal writing using AI. And they went from weeks to days to be able to respond to clients when they want a proposal. They wanted to enhance the claim processing. So they wanted to use AI to process the lower risk claims automatically, and then they were able to look at the higher value claims and spend more time on those. And they wanted to optimize underwriting. And they used AI for document analysis, and they reduced the time to underwrite from 75 days to 5 days. And so these are very specific uh, cases that they use and apply to very specific problems. Now, what was interesting was the process they used to get to these strategic problems. They identified the strategic problems ahead of time, then held lots of meetings with people, all the people who suggested one of those 60 use cases, and said, hey, help us narrow these 60 use cases down to address these three problems. And he would the chief strategy officer would share with me that the golden ticket was when somebody said, I know I've proposed this use case, but these use cases are the best ones. So I'll take mine off the table and support these other ones to support our strategic goals. So it was a great connection between what people could see AI could do and what they wanted AI to do to support their strategic goals. And this is the missing step. This is the most important step that many organizations skip. Instead of looking at all the use cases and trying to prioritize them in a vacuum, they're setting them aside and saying, you have to set them aside and say, what are the biggest strategic problems we need to address? And then find AI initiatives, the AI applications and solutions that will support you solving those problems. Now, I can't emphasize this enough, but I think it's a point to just dwell on for a little bit. What are you trying to get AI to do for you? What are the choices you are going to make with AI to create that strategy to achieve your strategic goals? All right, let's move on to the next area, which is, let me see, just see if there are any comments here. Okay, Jay, thank you so much for posting the slides. I appreciate that. I just do not have my act together to be able to post them and present and do everything else at the same time. So the third area that I want to talk about today is, can you actually execute on that strategy? And one thing the insurance company did is they went and engaged a consulting firm to do an audit, an assessment of all of their existing AI capabilities. And so you can do this before or after, but at some point you need to understand if these are the applications that we want to build with AI, if these are the solutions, then do we have the capabilities to be able to do this? And there are 5 key areas that we typically encourage you to do an assessment. Looking at your people, do they have the skills? Do they have the mindsets to be able to do this? Ethos is what we call the leadership and the culture. What does the leadership look like? What does your culture look like to be able to take on a transformational change? What do the processes look like? Again, how do you get things done around here is part of your culture, but very specifically, do your processes encourage fast moving, responsive ways of taking these technologies and putting them into action? Fourth is, do you have the data? Is it in a place where you can actually use it? And I want to make sure that we emphasize this is not clean and perfect data because data will never be clean, it will never be perfect. It is, do you have it in a place? Can you access it? Can you know, do you know where your data is? I worked with quite a few companies and they think they know where the data is, but they can't actually get to it. And there's also a question of, are we defining things the same way? So data has a lot of issues. We're going to do a live stream at some point in the future about how to look at your data. So we'll do a deep dive into that. And then the platforms. Do you have the tools to be able to build the application solutions you want to have? And so when you go through and do that sort of capability mapping, you can go in and do an assessment. You can put a numerical quantitative number against this, but the key question is tying it back to the strategic objectives that you have. Those particular applications and solutions you want to build, do you have the capabilities? And now, which are the most important capabilities that you have that will determine which initiatives you can go and pursue right away? And also, what are some that you may not have in great shape yet? So you have to plan for those to be later in the process. So an example I'll give is one organization in a consumer electronics realized that they had this big project that they wanted to do. Great use case, great strategic objective, but their data wasn't in a place where they were comfortable being able to use it right away. So they said that's going to take about 6 months. But there is a smaller project that was still very valuable, maybe not as important strategically, but they could execute on it right away. And so they decided to do that one first for one primary reason. It would give them experience, it would give their people practice in working with the data, working with the platforms, building applications, getting the wheels turning. So while they were waiting for data on the big, important strategic project to be ready, they started getting busy and looking at how we can actually create AI applications that drive strategic value with the smaller, maybe less important project, but they could execute on it. So this brings me to the whole point of how do you start prioritizing? And so prioritization of your applications initiatives is extremely important. So this is called the 6 quarter walk. I love the 6 quarter walk because it lays out what you're going to do over the next 18 months to achieve those strategic objectives that you set out in step two. And this is just one way to think about it. This is, again, not an exact mapping, but you can roughly think in the beginning, we're laying our foundations and getting quick wins. Then we're refining and building all of these very specific applications and tools. And then we're starting to optimize and build more tools. So those are just some ways to think about it. This is not set in stone, but you're beginning to see that there's a progression. And very importantly, this is both about building the applications and increasing your capabilities to be able to execute on those things. So this is where you're sort of prioritizing. You're saying, hey, we want to do this because we know it's a key strategic objective, but we don't have the capabilities. So we need to be developing them at some point early along the way. So being able to phase out and in time when you do what is a great way to tell people, hey, we need to get up to speed on these things right away by Q1 or Q2. And if somebody's a jackrabbit, these are the people who say, I want to do this initiative now. You can say to them, we would love to. That's in Q4 because we don't have the capabilities today. Or we have these other priorities that need to get done right now. And we're going to get to that in a few quarters, but not today. So again, this makes sure that everybody is on the same page. What are we going to do? What are we not going to do? Choices that are integrated across the entire organization. So you see how it all fits together to achieve your strategic goals. All right, next one I want to talk about is a very important topic, which is regularly updating the strategic plan that you have. So you got this beautiful 6 quarter plan, 18 months planned out. The reality is it's not going to stay relevant and up to date if you don't update it. Because the reality is these technologies, as we all have seen, just change constantly. So you need a strategy that is looking forward, that is adaptable. And so what I like to think about is that the 6 quarter walk, it creates a strategic buffer for all of these unexpected developments. And I like to use the word buffer because it may look like it's laid out in very clear 6 quarters going out. The reality is it's written in pencil so that you can change it and adapt it depending on what's happening inside your organization, changing priorities. You may discover things along the way with that value matrix. There are new ways to reinvent, for example, that will match better with your strategic goals. And the technology is changing, the landscape is changing. So, this allows you that flexibility and also that structure, that clarity to be able to have a strategy, but also the ability to adapt it. So I just want to take a minute because when I say to people, you need to update the strategy regularly, people ask me, so how often is that? And I'm like, quarterly. Do it quarterly. It may be too. It just doesn't. You don't have enough time passing over a month, for example, for you to see significant changes. But if you extend it for more than a quarter, you run the risk of your strategy becoming out of date and weighed down by doing things that may not be as relevant. And then I think their heads just start exploding with this idea like, how on earth do we do a quarterly review? And you may be thinking of your traditional strategic process that you probably just went through this past fall. It is a hard, all hands on deck, tedious budgeting and planning process. When I say the quarterly review, it is very different. What you're doing is you're looking at your strategy and you're checking to see is it still relevant. So a couple things is at the end of each quarter, check across all of the work streams and adjust the remaining 5 quarters for any changes, and then add another quarter at the end. So that's a rolling 6 quarter plan. And the way to think about this is that each quarter, there's a preparation stage that you're tracking and finding out all the things that are happening. You're running some analysis, you're highlighting any deviations, and then you're getting feedback from people across your organization, from your various stakeholders, internally and externally, your customers, your suppliers, your partners. And you're identifying any roadblocks, any best practices, any new opportunities. And then you're looking at the landscape too to see if anything has shifted. So you're not going through a huge review, you're doing a really quick check in across the organization, looking at the benchmarking of where you want to be and where you hope to be, and where you actually are. And you're getting some feedback and you're looking at the landscape. And then you go through a very detailed process. And I'm just going to recap this very, very quickly. You're looking again at the very first thing is what are strategic goals? Grounding in those strategic goals and reviewing like, are these objectives still valid? Then you're going through and you're looking at the project. You're saying, okay, are we where want to be? What are some challenges that have come up? And then you're going and looking at your capabilities again. So, again, what we just talked about before, being clear about what the problems are. Are we, again, where are we actually? What capabilities do we have? Are we lacking? Are we ahead of? Looking at the current priorities and saying, are these still the right priorities? Do we have new opportunities we want to consider or not? And then you're, again, looking at the roadmap, adjusting it and extending it. So that's the process. And it doesn't have to be overwrought. It doesn't have to, it's not rethinking the entire process. It's updating it and making sure it is still relevant and that you're still on track. And the very important reason why this is so important is that you're sprinting, as you can imagine, going as fast as you can to get to the objective, and you're taking a break at the end of the quarter. And you're saying, all right, everyone, gather around. Are we all here? Basically, are we where we want to be? And making sure that everyone agrees this is what the roadmap looks like. We're making these adjustments. Is everyone agreed on what we're doing here? Okay, ready, set, go. Another sprint to the end of the quarter, and then stopping and assessing, readjusting, and then going again. So you can see how this rhythm of a quarterly review becomes an essential part of your AI strategy. Now, I want to talk about the last area, and then, and which is really around governance and organizing for AI. I know you may just be rolling your eyes right now thinking about the word governance. But I happen to love governance because when you have it just right, what I call Goldilocks governance, when you have it just right, you have enough to give some structure, but not so much structure that you're slowing things down. And what I often find is that we want to have so much oversight. We want to make sure things don't go off the rails, that we put too much governance. It's too hot, too much, and it slows everything down and we get bogged down. So what we want is not to code governance, like it doesn't exist. So it's all over the place. You don't have any strategy. It's just scattered efforts. That's where a lot of AI efforts are today. There just simply isn't enough governance around what we will do, what we won't do, and enough strategy. And then when there's too much, meaning that you can't experiment, we're not clear on what we're trying to do. Um, Innovation stalls, teams get very frustrated, and you miss these opportunities. So the 6 quarter walk and coupled with Goldilocks governance, communicating to everyone, this is what our strategy is. This is where we want to do. This is where we want to go. These are the things we're doing. These are the things we're not doing. Is that just right Goldilocks governance? It's very clear about what we will do. You have the ability to make very quick decisions because this is a framework. So when a new opportunity comes in, to go, does it fit the framework? Does it fit our strategy? If it does, it gets approved. If it doesn't, it gets put into the hopper. We'll look at it at the end of the quarter. You have some really clear safeguards about what things you can do and not do. Again, having strong governance around ethical and responsible AI is a really important thing about that. But there's also this ability to learn and to share and to adapt. And so, again, that flexibility, the ability to experiment, the ability to innovate, and knowing that there is a place in your strategy, literally every quarter, to be able to look at these new opportunities is a great release valve for all of that pent up frustration. Like, well, I don't know where we're trying to do with this, or again, a place for people to gather, get aligned, be connected, and be very clear about what it is that they're trying to do. All right, so that's, I think, what I have for today. Yes, that is all I have. And let me just check the comments. That was quite the wild ride, I have to say. I was a little afraid that I was going to be able to get through all of that. All right, so just have a comment here. All right, so Jay has this point here that I believe that harvesting existing use cases are operationally bound, not blue sky or strategic. I really agree with that, Jay. Again, this is that it's great to look at existing use cases for efficiency and for engaging with customers, because here are some problems we have today. Let's go and solve them. But that whole reinventing area of the value matrix oftentimes gets put to the side because we can't imagine what business we would be in. We can't imagine doing things in a completely different way unless we're looking at our business, looking at the strategic opportunities, and saying, "Oh, what are ways that we can reinvent ourselves?" I was working with one call center. Again, a call center, you just go, wow, that's ripe for just automation and efficiency, engaging with customers, because that's what they do. And we have a lot of call centers going through automation now with AI, and especially with agentic AI. But this one call center said, well, what new businesses could we get into because we have these new capabilities? And because they were working with a lot of law firms, they had that data. They could see that there was this one problem that law firms were not being able to address. And they said, well, we have all of these capabilities. We have this ability to do analysis. We also have access to the data. Let's create this new product, new place that we could go into to get deeper in and to help them, because law firms are not going to develop AI anytime soon to be able to figure this out. We could actually open a whole new front of services to be able to support them. So I think these are the opportunities that once you get into the mix of things, you start spinning around that value matrix and you start seeing how things start getting connected. And that reinvention area in particular is a great place to think about how do we solve strategic problems for ourselves and for our customers and our partners in new and interesting ways. All right. I love this comment, Jay. Governance has kept money in my bank account. Agreed with you. Governance is one of those things where I think it's so important that we think about how we actually are going to get things done around here. And again, people have a bad taste in their mouth when they hear the word governance, but I encourage you to think about putting in place good governance that allows you to go to the very edges of what is possible, to take you to the edge of where you want to be instead of staying safe at home base because you don't know how far and how fast you can go. All right. Let's see. Okay, and I think Jay has this other question. Can't one base structure on capability? AI enhances delivery and can highlight delivery heroes. Absolutely. But I think if you only begin with capabilities and only with use cases, you're missing again that connection to your strategic goals. And right now, your executive suite, your C suite, your board is asking, what do we do with AI? And if you show up with a bunch of use cases, you look at your capabilities and you only look at things that you're currently capable of doing, it limits your possibility. And I think, Jay, you're being a bit provocative to say, no, you should be looking beyond your capabilities and saying, if we could achieve these things, if we could create these types of applications with AI, but we don't have those capabilities, and that's a big signal that you want to go and get those capabilities. One of the things we recommend is that if you do not have the capability in-house to build AI applications and solutions, they have the engineers, the data engineers, the product managers and developers to do this, then those are the first people you want to bring on board. You may be able to go and contract for them initially, but eventually, if you are going to be serious as an enterprise, again, I'm not talking about small businesses here, but as an organization, if you want to have the capability to be able to use AI, you will have to have those kind of developers and product managers, the people who can think strategically and also has the skills to build these products in-house. And so we talk about, did this in a live stream a few weeks ago, where you want to get access to everybody and you want to go and hire those people and get those skills in-house as quickly as possible so we can start building applications for your organization specifically. All right. Let's see. We have Lisa here. Hey, Lisa, how you doing? Helpful discussion, $1 million takeaway. Every leader needs to create an education plan for the entire team and ask, what are the biggest strategic problems we need to address? Thank you for sharing that, Lisa. Again, I so agree with you. I often say that you need to have, let me just put that away for a second. So we often have to have leaders who can think strategically about AI. But there's a big problem. They have a knowing, doing, leading gap. They know about AI, but they're not using it personally. And because they haven't experienced the transformational aspects of AI, there's no way for them to lead an organization and to lead a strategy. So get your leadership team, your top two levels of leaders, up to speed on AI and using it actively in their work every day. And then they can start seeing how AI can be applied to the organization in a very strategic way. And when I run across leaders, I'm like, so how often are you using AI? They kind of sheepishly say, well, I've used it a couple of times. I played with it, but I'm not using it. And I'm like, we need to get you on board. And so do anything you can to bring people on board so that these top strategic thinkers of the organization are thinking about how AI can be used. And they're asking those very important questions. How can AI be used to solve our top strategic problems? And they're asking that over and over and over again. Again, I say to executives, you don't need to have all the answers. You need to be asking the really smart strategic questions that nobody else is asking. All right. All right. From a risk management point of view, Ram found this great NIST document. And again, it's the AI RMF resources playbook, risk management playbook. Again, the National Institute of Science Technology has been doing some great work in laying out governance, regulatory, not even regulatory issues, but just how to stay safe, how to manage risk. So Ram, thank you so much for sharing that. I haven't seen that playbook, so I want to go and take a look at that. All right, let's see. And Jay, just a last quick reminder about looking at the distinctive needs of stakeholders versus shareholders. And I can't emphasize that enough. I'm very careful to use the word stakeholders because stakeholders are your shareholders and also your employees, your customers, your partners, your supply chain people. I mean, so many people across the ecosystem that you need to be taking a look at. All right, that is what I have for today. I'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll be out next week traveling, and I will be talking about the state of agentic AI. I'm doing a lot of work around agentic AI, infusing a lot of examples into the book that Katja Welsh and I are finishing up. I'm so happy to be saying that, and so more to come on this. Again, I haven't touched on this topic in a little while since last fall. And I really want to go into and saying, what does agentic AI look like? How much of it is real? This is the question I get oftentimes. And in particular, how do you show up as a leader to lead and run an organization that is made up of human workers and also now some digital workers? So we'll be exploring all of that in 2 weeks. So until then, take care, have fun, stay safe out there. All right, take care. I'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye bye.